Hello, everyone. I am Dr. Dream, and you are here for a podcast of the DMT Chronicles, a sub podcast of Psychedelics as Medicine. Today, my guest is one. Well, I recently flew to Dallas, Texas for a conference and was looking for some things to listen to on Audible. And I came across Adam's book, Butler's DMT Field Guide, and it filled the entire flight. And before I deplaned, I sent him an email saying I would love to have you on my show. And within 24 hours, I heard back from him. A little bit about Adam. He is an author, researcher, and consciousness explorer, best known for his work surrounding DMT, psychedelics, neuroplasticity, and personal transformation. Through his books, podcasts, interviews, and online platforms, Adam has become a respected voice in the evolving conversation around altered states, healing, and expanded awareness. His journey into psychedelic exploration emerged from profound personal challenges and a deep search for meaning, ultimately leading him to examine the intersection of science, spirituality, and human potential. Adam is the creator, as I said before, of Butler's DMT Field Guide, which I highly recommend, and many other works focused on helping people approach psychedelic experiences with greater awareness, responsibility, and intention. His perspective blends practical insights with philosophical depth, exploring not only the mechanics of altered states, but the deeper questions of consciousness, fear, healing, and the nature of reality itself. He has a unique style that I have found to be very refreshing and certainly resonate with. Today, he continues to educate and inspire audiences around the world through conversations that challenge conventional thinking and invite people into deeper self-inquiry and transformation. Adam Butler, welcome to the DMT Chronicles. Wait, go ahead. I'm having troubles with your mic. No. Did you change something? It's kind of funny. You sound like a machine elf may sound. It's very, very bizarre. I'm not sure if there's anything going on my end. Do you want to check your connections and things?
So it's funny you say that because that's what I thought you sounded like was the machine else. No, it's as soon as it's like you said, as soon as I hit OK, that went. I can. But it's so crazy that this is happening.
I can hear you now.
You that sounds normal on your end?
Yeah, how do I sound?
You're still fuzzy, but I'm wondering if it's just the internet connection trying to like catch up. But I didn't change anything.
You sound perfect to me in this moment. Should we go for it?
I mean, I could jive with that. My concern is that what everybody else is hearing?
Are you getting a lag?
Nope. No, your video is completely clear and there isn't any lag, but it does sound like like an insectoid slash DMT entity is going through. Let me close all the other tabs. Make sure I don't have anything else open, which I
Gee,
don't.
maybe we shouldn't have taken that hit before we started the interview.
Uh,
Yeah, I'm not sure. We were talking just fine before I pressed record.
yeah, yeah, and literally the second that I hit it is when. You hear me now?
I can hear you now. I knew this
I can,
interview was going to be psychedelic. I didn't know it was going to affect our audio.
so I can hear you perfectly and see you perfectly. Are we on the same page now?
Yep, we're on the same page. Let's go for it.
That's awesome. So, but I did hear everything that was in your intro, and that was beautiful. I appreciate it. And Yeah, I think you hit a lot of the points that I'd like to touch on. So I'm excited for this conversation, and I appreciate the opportunity to share my message, especially following up on some of the guests that we had mentioned you have on. So I'm honored to be here.
Yeah, you're most definitely in good company. I appreciate you being here. Before we get into DMT and consciousness and all the things people know you for, I'd love to actually get an understanding of who Adam was before all of this.
Before my kind of life-changing experience with psychedelics.
Yes.
So it's actually a very clear and distinct line. And it basically, so I'm 45 years old. I'll be 46 just this July. And at 40 years old, I really had my proverbial midlife crisis. And it wasn't like a bad day or a bad event. It was over the course of about 2 years that everything in multiple ways came falling apart. And I became suicidal and highly suicidal. And I kind of spent quite a bit of time exploring if I wanted to stay on this planet or not. But I guess what led me up to that point, and it's a really important part of my story, and I share it and I kind of bullet point it in my book, and I'll happily pick apart any aspects of it. But I mentioned how I just got back from a 9-day retreat where I was with facilitators as well as I was with some, we were doing, IFS therapy, so internal family system. So we were diving into some really, traumatic issues with people. And, we don't need to go down the list of the worst things that can happen to people. We all know it or it's happened to us. And in a lot of reasons, that's why we're turning to psychedelics. And I didn't have any of those things. So I had I grew up with a silver spoon in my mouth. I had amazing parents, still do. I had amazing two sets of amazing grandparents. I was college educated. I was gifted a large sum of money. I started multiple businesses. I had all the material wealth. I really had every possible advantage. That being said, uh, I'm now 5.5 years sober and of alcohol, and that was a major part of my whole kind of getting that shit out of my life, so then I could start exploring myself. But I started drinking when I was 13, and pretty much I drank damn near every day from 13 to 40, and over the course of that time, I lost multiple, blew up hard, really in bad ways, long-term relationships. I lost multiple high-paying jobs. I went from owning, 15 plus houses and having all the material wealth that anybody could imagine to basically being homeless, living on the streets, broke. And, I'm still in that transformative part of my life. But now I'm finally, like, as of like just a few days ago, as in the last article that I just handed in, like last night in email, and I'd love to unpack that story as well. But I'm finally comfortable saying what my role is, what I need to do on this planet, so to speak, and how I'm going to take all of my prior successes and now transmute them and transform them into my next steps. Whatever that may look like, I'm not sure, but I do know what direction I'm headed.
So share with us, was there an actual moment where you realized conventional paths weren't giving you the answers that you were searching for?
Yes. So the and quite literally, and again, I can unpack it to however deep you'd like. The first kind of kick in the junk and the first like, wow, things need to change was I got a restraining order against me. And, all of my stories are pretty out there and well documented. And this was a horrible aspect of my life. And I was with a woman for about 7.5 years. We had just got finished purchasing and renovating this beautiful 3-story Victorian, very close to the ocean. We just had this beautiful custom kitchen put in. But I was a drunk, belligerent, narcissistic asshole. I treated everybody like shit, including her beautiful daughters. And I had done that for years. And I was just hiding and masking all of the crap that I never had dealt with. And I had everything on paper. So it was like, well, why was I so angry and upset? And I'm still unpacking that, which, I don't have all the answers. I've certainly made a lot of ground on that. But I was sitting there one day doing my work. I got a knock on the door from a constable. He handed me a restraining order, and it said some pretty horrific things about how I was verbally abusing her, spatially abusing her, emotionally abusing her. And every time I tell my story, I do asterisk it because I do want to put this out there. I've never been in a fight in my life. I've never been hit, or I've never hit anybody, man or woman. If I see blood, I pass out. So like I'm not like a fighter or aggressive person, but I was spatially and verbally, and I was certainly projecting my energy into the room. So she did everything she needed to do other than have me shot or whacked, which she could have done, or had me, really arrested. But um, so long story short, that I've that was a shock to my system. But at that point, I was still blaming her. I was still blaming society. Everybody else was the enemy. I certainly wasn't going to take ability. It was, well, who the heck is she kicking me out of my house? Blah blah blah. I'll show her. Well, that was right before COVID really kicked in. So instead of just being a 21-day process where we go and have so really he just said, listen, you just need to vacate for 21 days. You'll have your day in court. The judge will tell you what you need to do, and then from there it is what it is. I was a real estate investor. I had plenty of money, and I wasn't really worried about the house. I just wanted to move on. But then the court shut down for all non-essential issues. So that dragged out for basically a year. So, paying the rent, paying the utilities, having my life just dragged on. All of my shit was still held up in the house because all I could leave, I had to leave immediately. So all of my stuff was still there. So over the course of that time, though, I did realize that I did need to stop drinking alcohol. And that was an easy after New Year's, waking up in the fetal position, puking, feeling like an idiot at 40 years old. Like that was just like, hey, last time. That was a cold turkey. I've no desire to drink again with the help of psychedelics. And again, we can unpack that. But around 40 years old, I finally realized I needed to get alcohol out of my system. But at that time, after that relationship where I got the restraining order against me, I got into another relationship with another woman who had two other young kids, fell in love with them, moved into their home, but after 2 years realized that I still had a lot of work to do with myself, and I blew up that relationship. At the same time I blew up that relationship, I quit my high-paying job as a home inspector where I was making about 180 grand a year. And I say that not in a braggadocious way. I just want to put things into perspective where I really had everything lined up, 4 to 5 grand a week coming in, steady, easy job, had done it for many years. Like I was coasting, but I just needed a change. So I moved from Rhode Island to Cape Cod, and then I started working on Martha's Vineyard, which is this like super like high-end rich island that's all millionaires and billionaires. And I started working for a close family friend selling marble and granite. And now I was making 10% commission, but 10% commission on hundreds of thousands of dollars potentially of sales. And it was just interacting with millionaires and billionaires. They'd take me out for lunch. I'd sell them cool shit. Other people would put it in. It was the easiest money I could make. I was living in my buddy's basement apartment, but there's this mansion right on the ocean. Life was fucking great. Well, one of his business partners ended up screwing me over $900, and I found it, kind of like in a shady way, and I confronted him. Now at this point, I was still butthurt from all the crap that had happened, and I called them out on it, and it really didn't get resolved the way I'd wanted to. They gave me my money back, but it was still basically I threatened to kill him. And again, I don't say that in any light way. It was bad. I'd kind of given up on women. I was going to take a break from women. I'm going to build this brotherhood in business. I was crushing it. This was great. I just started having money flow. And this punk's and he was like this 30-year-old little fucking, I shouldn't say that. I owe him an apology if I see him again. I'm going to have to hold forgiveness. But I confronted him and I said, I'm going to kill you. And I meant it. At that point, I had nothing to lose. And he lived, like 3 blocks away from me. And he was a hothead. So I knew that it just with us going home. And that was on a Sunday night. I woke up Monday morning and said, I'm going to drive to California and hug a redwood tree. And I packed my backpack. I packed my Audi S5, just a two-door coupe, and I just took off. And I took off. So I didn't have a job. I didn't have a place to live. And I just said, fuck it. And I lived for like a year and a half on the road. And, that whole time I did DMT and shrooms and did a lot of self-explorations and came back, wrote the book, went to Monroe Institute, did the Darkness Retreats, been on a shitload of podcasts. And the last few years, it's just been an awesome kind of set of self-exploration. But a lot to unpack there. But one thing led to another, and beautifully synchronistic.
So I got to believe that during the heavy drinking time, you weren't using these powerful psychedelic medicines. Is that a fair assumption?
Absolutely not. Fair assumption. Never combined them. Never will. No.
And so what was the entry? I mean, you go you're giving up on this job. At that time, were you Martha's Vineyard? Were you using psychedelics at that time, or like what was the entry point for the psychedelic medicine?
So at that point, I had moved to the Cape. I had, so I had a lot of the past crap had been away. And at the time when I was in the Cape, I moved there and maybe I had beer in my fridge for maybe the first like month or so. And then I realized, that I really need to get that out of my system. And but I was sitting there realizing how my life was still, yes, I was making money, but I had lost so much so many times over. And, I knew, and I was still depressed. So all of that stuff that had made me the belligerent narcissistic jerk before still hadn't been, brought to the surface. So, and I'd never been on any prescription pills. And that really didn't interest me. And at that point, and it still is, psilocybin mushrooms and MDMA, and that's been started coming out being popular as far as the therapeutic value. And I had done shrooms back in, high school and early college days, but then there was this 20-year hiatus. And I told myself, well, this is something that maybe I can get into. And this is something that I know I'm comfortable in, and I can kind of ease my way in and start microdosing and not micro, I think, maybe I started with like 2 grams the first time, kind of getting back into it. But the sum of that was I did shrooms for about 3 months before I did DMT. And those 3 months were pivotal because that was really where I had my dark night of the soul. I did all of my, POTS work. I mentioned how I just did that internal family systems therapy. That's where I really was able to confront my demons, find the scars in my psyche, and do the hard inner work where I was looking at myself in the mirror, 40 pounds overweight, broke, no girlfriend, like homeless, being like, what the fuck, dude? Like, this is on you. And once I finally took ownership of it, then that was fantastic. That was one of those like aha moments. But I really, when I say DMT is what saved my life, and DMT is really what transformed my life, it really wasn't until I had that pivotal day about 3 months into exploring shrooms that I really got into DMT. And then from that point, for maybe the next 3 years, it was really just DMT and shrooms, heavy DMT, hundreds of times smoking it, and ayahuasca, a couple dozen times. And then up until recently, maybe the last 9 months, I've started working in some other substances to try to understand the difference in those modalities. But yeah, there was a day when I first got introduced to DMT, and like most people, it kind of falls in your lap and the universe kind of presents it to you. I had a buddy that knew how depressed I was and how I really was thinking about killing myself, and offered it to me, offered a safe place to do it. And that first day, I did about 7 sessions back to back to back, equating to close to 50 hits. So it's probably about 45 hits in the course of about 50 minutes. Excuse me, about course of an hour and a half. And yeah, because I went in there with, hey, listen, if I don't get my answer, I'm going off into the woods and not coming back. And it was really that serious. And from the first introductory session to that last pivotal one that I got my answer, so to speak, I came out of that just in a ball of gratitude, humbled, and with a purpose. And
So, Ad,
now I'm pulling myself out of this fucking hole that I built and all the horse shit that I put myself into and all the debt I put myself into. But I'm laughing, smiling, and meeting cool people the whole way and doing cool shit. So it's all part of my story.
so even after 3 months of the psilocybin journeys, you were still in a state of depression and kind of thoughts of suicide.
Oh, absolutely. Because all they had done at that point was just highlight and shine a spotlight on what an asshole I had been. So I had stopped, again, looking for external solutions or external reasons why everything in my internal life had collapsed. And it was only when, really I was staring at the mirror. I remember really the day. It was like 5 grams of shrooms, staring on the mirror, just looking at myself. And it was horrible. And I had to take accountability for just like me as a grown man screaming and yelling in a little hundred, I shouldn't say little, let me rephrase it. From a petite, 5'2", 100-pound female. And I'm screaming at the top of my voice with my veins popping out of my head, screaming F you, pointing my finger at her face. Like if I ever saw a guy doing that today, I would be horrified and I'd do anything I could to stop it. And it would just be like a trigger now. And it's just horrifying to know that I didn't do that to one woman, but unfortunately I did it to three, which is why I got dumped and broken up three times by three beautiful, amazing women. And um yeah, it's something that I'll make up for, will be making up for the rest of my life again. But the DMT gave me that aha moment.
So let me ask, was all of this self-guided? Any help with the integration during this period?
The shrooms, no, the DMT, my buddy did sit with me that first day.
Okay.
But I mean, there was no really, he was there just holding that space. It wasn't, he wasn't there like talking me through some sort of like questionnaire or anything. It really was just, even just hearing him breathe, hearing him walk around, like knowing that, hey, if somebody knocked on the door or if I needed water or a blanket, that I could kind of just mumble it. That really was what. And then, the more you go into this space, you really do understand energetically what that means, holding space for someone. And it is energetically very important. So I can look back now and really appreciate what he did for me, which is really, again, hold that space for me in a beautiful way. But yeah, really, the first session that I did, like the first time it hit my lips, I think I took either two or three hits, two or three really small hits. Then, I can explain what happened. And then subsequently, like I said, maybe six sessions in between, all roughly a handful of hits. And then that last session, that seventh or eighth session, I took like 7 or 8 hits, and it was out of a vape pen. It was one that had like a crucible that you could put the actual crystals in. So I was able to just hit a button and rip it, which is why I was able to take it that far. But um, if I could, I think if I explain the first one and the last one, I think maybe those are the where the most of the information lies, and then the middle ones are really just beautiful IMAX,
Okay.
Alex Gray type looks. But
So did you break through in the first round?
no, oh, absolutely not. So I really only had that breakthrough on that very last session. Um, so and I think it's really important, because when I say, I had that epiphany, that breakthrough, and that first day it saved my life. Those are all true statements. But I want to make sure I clarify that it wasn't on the first session or the first rip or the first time it entered my body. It really was after playing with it and exploring it for an hour and a half and pushing my body really to a pretty extreme limit and a saturated limit, which I really wouldn't necessarily recommend. But in my case, I had, there really wasn't any alternative. But especially now that I'm learning a little bit more about not only how my body handles it, but serving and holding space for other people, and how everybody's metabolism does take all of these different medicines in a different way. So it's definitely not a one size fits all routine or dosage for everybody. So what I did that first time, so that first hit, the second it hit my lips, and the second it kind of I tasted it, it just felt natural. It felt innate. It tasted like I tasted it and felt it before. It was a very familiar nasal sensation on the back of my throat, and I instantly felt like I was back at my childhood friend's grandparents' house, like in their basement hallway. So I don't know if it was wood paneling or the smell, or maybe like their old people's bad breath smelling like that, whatever that weird smell that DMT has, something really brought me back to being comfortable. And then it was like, okay, everything's buzzing and feeling weird, but I don't feel scared. I don't feel poisoned. And it felt as though like the veil was being removed, not like I was being drugged up like on LSD, or kind of like when shroom starts kicking in. So I instantly felt comfortable, but certainly no breakthrough, no entity interaction, no conveyance of any information. It was really just like, cool, my body starts humming. Um, but that's the beautiful thing about smoking DMT, is that it only lasts, 7 or 8 minutes, typically under 10 minutes, and then you come back fully lucid. You can kind of like take a couple breaths, take a drink of water, and then in my case, I really needed to go back in, because I wasn't there to just see cool shit. Like I was really there to try to get an answer for all of my issues. And so I pushed it a little bit further, but it really, again, it wasn't any interactions with anything. It was just really all of my senses got heightened, and then other senses kind of started being added on. So like, you could start, your peripheral vision got like more expansive, and other, the ability to take in more like vibrational energy was certainly there, and all of the things that happen in a DMT trip that people colorfully explain. But again, no epiphany, no conveyance of information. So I pushed it, pushed it, pushed it, pushed it. Now we're an hour plus into it. I'm on my fifth round and I'm just pushing it, but I'm not getting anything. Like I'm just like, all right, cool. My body can take DMT. This is fucking great, but I'm not here like to take DMT. Like I'm here to, to look back at that day, it really was. I'm good. Like if I don't if this can't help me, like all the shit I was hearing from Joe Rogan and the Spirit Molecule and reading the book and watching the documentary, it's like fuck, like if this isn't gonna fix me, then I'm really good. So that last session, like all of them though, I did set an intention, but that last session I really did pray and I really just said, please, can I get some sort of answer? Can I get something? And that last session, I took as many and as deep hits as I could. And that last session was completely different than all the others. So all of the like fancy sights and sounds stopped, all of the like the moving morphing colors stopped, all of the everything went blank, and I was just suspended in this space. So I wasn't being like projected up into a portal. I wasn't descending into like some pit. I was just comfortably kind of hanging there. And since then I've had a lot of different interactions with entities and different voices. This really was just that. So there wasn't any entities, and I wouldn't say that this was even a breakthrough. This was like a conveyance of information, and I got what I needed. And in essence, it was like a telepathic conveyance or a download or whatever it may be that was like most people. I was spending so much time worrying and stressed and anxious about my past as well as my future, and how could I have been such an asshole and lost so many beautiful things and jobs and money, and now I am asked out. What am I going to do in the future? I have no idea. I've got no place to live, no relationship, all of my shit's gone. And I was driving myself into the fucking ground, and I had no way to stop the rattling in my brain. And in an instant, like all the proverbial dots that needed connected in my own life got connected, and everything was like chill, and they all got connected, and like that entity conveyed like, all right, cool, here it is, like here's everything. But then like another 1,000 dots came about, and I was like, see those? And then those peripheral ones got connected instantly, and then like 1,000,000 dots, and then 1,000,000,000 dots, and it just kept expanding and expanding and expanding. And that conveyed to me, it was like, listen, you stupid human. It's not to connect all the dots. It's not to make sense of everything. It's to chill. It's to relax in the space between the dots. It's, to enjoy the quietness between the beats, and to just take your life chill. And it really was that like Ram Dass moment of be here now. And it's really corny to like repeat it. And it all came down to like, yeah, be here now. But that be here now moment combined with 3 months of shadow work with the shrooms was like, all right, cool. So not an alcoholic, not an asshole. I'll never talk to anybody like that, especially a freaking woman. And I can get out of my own way. I'm going to stop banging my head against the wall. And now I can take all those assets and all of those things that have got me been successful my entire life, and now I can use them for my good of myself, good of others, and yeah, share the book, share the podcast, share the messages. And that was really me kind of before psychedelics, in the midst of psychedelics, and now, 4 years of, well, 5.5 years of being sober, and, 4.5 years of exploring psychedelics. Completely different man, completely different path. Still dealing with a bunch of shit. Everybody's human, but definitely not banging my head against the wall, and certainly not yelling at people and blaming other people for my own fuck ups. Like that does no one any good.
So let me ask you, even seasoned psychonauts that are friends of mine experience have hesitation, anxiety, maybe it could be even called a little bit of fear when they're going back into a breakthrough experience. How's that with you after your first breakthrough? Any of that?
I mean, as far as do I still get like nervous, or
Yes.
like is it ever easy? Uh, so no, I would say it never gets easy. I always have, I have my own kind of like rituals and routines, and I kind of get into my own meditative state. I certainly set my intention like any good psychonaut or anybody taking psychedelics should. But I answer that with, I have 100% curiosity and zero fear. So as many times as I've been in, I've always been dealt with respect. I've never been, in my opinion, like harmed or hurt. I've never dealt with entities that attack me in a vicious way. Even when I was saying how when I was in my shroom state, dealing with my enemies or my demons, that was all my own self. That was the parts that I needed to explore. So, did I come out of that tearful sometimes and have some shitty painful realizations? Absolutely. Was every trip, rosy? No. But I've never gone into that space and been scared of what's in there because I feel like I've energetically hardened myself and explored myself and again, not naive that there's not some evil and dark shit out there. And I definitely need to prepare myself for battle, so to speak, if need be. But I always have curiosity, but I would kind of asterisk that with, and especially maybe if somebody if they're getting new to psychedelics or maybe haven't explored as many times as I have, I would say you always have to listen to intuition, always listen to your gut. And there's been multiple times where I'll have everything set up, the candles are lit, I'll do I'll write my intentions down and whatever. That's the night, it's a full moon, everything's lined up, I'm going in. Well, at the 11th hour, something doesn't feel right. Or, I just want to go to bed and try to do a lucid dream state. Or maybe tonight I'll just do breath work. Or tonight I'm just going to listen to some tone music. And I'll put the pen away and no harm, no foul, and I'll whatever. I just won't do it. But then there's also times where, mid shower on a random Tuesday night, you're like, oh shit, tonight's the night, and I'm just gonna get right into my PJs and set it up and start whacking it. And I listen to my gut on both instincts. So um but yeah, now and especially now adding some of the new. So I mentioned how shrooms and DMT really were the things that I explored for years.
Mm.
I've now done 5-MeO, probably a couple dozen times, over 20 times, and I feel very comfortable how that molecule interacts with my body. I've recently done LSD 2, 3 times. Well, 3 times, but really two that went pretty deep. MDMA, and they all have their purpose and their place. And yeah, that there's something to be said, I think, about why are you using it? What's the reason? And I don't have any fear, and I've never met anybody uh, that's become addicted to psychedelics, or maybe some people use them a lot for a short amount of time, but I'm and maybe and not that I have to justify it, but I like to kind of paint analogies, and as an author, I'm always trying to like use colorful ways of describing it. Where because I have had some pushback where people have said, well, you quit alcohol, but now you're saying you've done DMT hundreds of times. So did you just replace one addiction for the other? And my kind of response to that is, if somebody's religious, and I'm not necessarily, but if you were to go to church on Sunday and then on Wednesday for Bible class or whatever it is, and you do that for 3 years, you're going to church a couple hundred times. So does that mean you forgot about Jesus or God or whatever, or you have to go back, or you're addicted to church, or it's like, no, it's a good place to be. It's energetically what resonates with you. Your friends are there, they play good music. Um, it's entertaining. It's part of your social life. So for me, the psychedelic space are all of those things for me. So I love going back, and I don't, and this is where, and again, if I could turn it on over to you, because I'd love how you've kind of worked this into your life. Um, this is where let's take the shame away from it. Let's talk about this in a transparent, authentic way. And yeah, it's okay for somebody like me who was an alcoholic and did have narcissistic tendencies and alcoholic issues to now say I use psychedelics on a continued basis to better myself and will. And there's ways to to have these conversations where it can highlight and help people instead of trying to have these in the dark.
Well, I'm impressed with just a little bit that you described of how you create the set and setting and intentions and things like that. I also have a little shelf with my DMT vape pen right by the bed, and I'll look at it before I go to sleep, and I'll be like, "Oh, is tonight the night that I wake up and have an experience?" And I can go, a week, 2 weeks, it just sort of depends. It was at one point weekly and sometimes a little bit more. And now we're kind of back to, a few weeks in there. And it's just kind of fascinating how it all works, and when we're drawn to it. And I think the whole aspect of intuition and just following. I mean, it's whether it's psychedelics or just how you lead your freaking life. Like listen to yourself, feel into,
Yeah.
the signs and messages are all around us. Pay attention and act and live accordingly. I did have an inch. I first time I did 5-MeO, a shaman, wonderful woman, came to one of my sound healing inspirational experiences we facilitate and said, hey, listen, if you're interested, I'd love to give you this 5-MeO experience. And this was 2010. And I said, yeah, oh boy, I've heard all about it, and at that point I'd been doing, DMT since 1994 or whatever it was. And so it was like, all right, 5-MeO, this is going to be great. And it was a beautiful guest house as part of a mansion in California after the event. And we were staying at the mansion, and I just thought, oh, this is perfect. But it was through a vaporizer, and I got 2 hits, and it was too much. I wasn't able to bring anything back. It's just she gave me too much. And she had asked if I wanted it filmed. And I'm like, no, I've done DMT so many times. And she said, well, can we at least record it, audio? And I'm like, yeah, I don't care. I'm not going to do anything. And she played it back, and I was making these crazy guttural sounds and all this stuff. And she said, oh yeah, and you got up and you curled up in the lap of my partner over here, and he sort of held you for a while, and then you did this and that. And I was just like, wow, that was crazy. So then in the last year, I was at a new friend's home, who I didn't even know from the psychedelic world. And after we had lunch, my wife and I are there. She said, I've got 5-MeO. I'd love to give you an experience. And I said, oh, excuse me for a second. I went into the bathroom and I looked at myself in the mirror, and I said, you think about it for 5 or 6 nights before you take a hit of DMT, and you've done that hundreds of times. Now, all of a sudden, at the end of lunch, someone's offering you 5-MeO and you're thinking about it. And I was like, well, I think I just need to go ahead and do it. And it was a couple of different 5-MeO vape pens. It was a much milder experience than what I had experienced before. And we're just starting to get into more experimenting and experiences with the 5-MeO. So personally, I'm interested in hearing about your 5-MeO experiences and then kind of relating it so people understand how it's different than your NN DMT experiences.
Oh, perfect question, perfect lead up, perfect setup, because it relates my introduction to it in a beautiful way, where instead of me having a scary or something that was whatever not comfortable, it was just the opposite. It was actually a beautiful introduction to the molecule. But I do think, if I could, to make sure everybody's talking about the same thing, and not that was ever the NN DMT expert, and typically when I say that, I've done it hundreds of times, but there are people that have done it thousands of times, and there are people like you that have been doing it for decades. There are people like Dr. Strassman and Dr. Gallimore that really study this. What I'm trying to do is just make sure people can talk about this again in an authentic, honest way. So with NN-DMT, make sure to, again, we're talking about smoking the crystals when it's that 5 to 10 minute blast, not drinking ayahuasca. That's when people are shitting themselves and purging, and it could last 8+ hours. And so some people, when I say DMT, they automatically think ayahuasca. So no. With 5-MeO as well, that can be the bufo from the bufo toads, from the desert toads. but that also has a bunch of different toxins in it. 5-MeO can just be synthesized in a lab, so it can be, synthetic as well. They can make it from the yopo seed and other plants, just like NN-DMT. You can derive it from plant bases. So, what type of 5-MeO are you getting? Is it frog? Is it made in a lab, or is it derived from a plant? And all of those are going to have different aspects. I've personally had the synthetic and from the yopo seeds. I've never done the bufo frog. My from listening to other people, the other toxins and the other things in the frog does present other layers of complexity in that trip. So I can't speak on that. I'd like to. I'm you know I that's I'm not scared of it. Again, I have curiosity, but this what I how I'm going to approach that is how I would like to share my experience with 5-MeO. And I think people that are getting into NN-DMT as well as 5-MeO, this would be my modality. And I'm the guy that likes to use it in a scientific exploration setting. I like to use it in a sexual setting. I like to put crystals right on my weed pipe and just rip it as much as I can and just take a long just and see as far as I can go. So I'm all about pushing it to the extremes. I'm all about exploring how you can put it into your own personal life with your hobbies. But for the person that's just getting introduced to it, it can be scary just to leap into these spaces and just kind of fucking hold on. And if you think you're just gonna, hey, I want that breakthrough moment like I did on my first day, unless you're in dire straits as I was, and if I didn't get that answer from God, I was out. If somebody's just looking to, hey, let me explore this, I would like to share how I was introduced to it. And I don't think I'm giving away any secret protocol or that this is like some copyrighted thing. I think just in basics, people should approach it as such. So I was asked to meet up with some people and explore the difference between 5-MeO and NN and how do we take it. So I went there being like, hey, listen, I'm the psychonaut guy. I've done NN a shitload of times. I've gone really deep on shrooms. I want to give whatever you give everybody else, give me 3x, give me 5x. I want to go as deep and as hard and I want to fucking white out and I just want to go there. If I die, I die. If I see God, I want to go see how the back of the house works. That's why I'm here. Let me go. And they were like, okay, Adam, like you can do that. If that's what you'd like, that's your option, and we'll facilitate you in that way. What we suggest you do, and I'm glad I did. So cheers to them for knowing what the hell they were doing. And I'm glad I listened. They're like, what I suggest you do is do our method, which is they had three different strength pens. So they had one that was, roughly 1/16. They had one that was roughly 1/8, and then one that was, basically damn near full. And the plan was, hey, just start off with a small hit with the lesser strength. Take a 3-second draw, hold it for 3 seconds. Just see how it feels. Does it make you buzz? Does you feel comfortable? Is it warm and fuzzy, or is it, oh shit, I'm scared? If it's warm and fuzzy, let's repeat that again. So in this case, and this is really important. Set and setting, have the safe place to do it. You should be in no rush. You should have the entire day to explore. In this case, I did. I was able to sleep in that same place where I was using it. So I was very comfortable. And long story short, my first introduction to 5-MeO was about a 2-hour experience. And it went from the lowest dose pen that I danced with for probably about a half hour to 40 minutes, where it was longer draws, longer holds, and then all right, now I feel comfortable going to the half and half blend. And then all right, so that second step up though was like, oh shit, you're definitely leveling up. But I wasn't scared. I was more curious, and now I'm getting the vibratory hum, way different than NN-DMT. So not highly visual, not highly ordered auditory, really visceral vibratory, and your body starts going into a different place. And you do start getting lighter, like it does go to the whiteout phase, but instead of just me being thrown into this white chaos, it went from dark to gray to lightish gray to then, and this is the beautiful thing was, so I'm about a half hour and a half into it. I've now danced with the two lower dose pens. I have the option at my rate and at my leisure, if I'd like to push to the higher level. Now, again, that's why I'm there, right? So I'm a big tough guy. Yeah, this is what I want to do from the beginning. And I'm so glad I didn't. So now I take the pen, I start off But now I know too, even with this, when I get that pen, I don't need to rush this. I don't need to just go balls in that first time. I can sit with this pen now for a half hour, for an hour and a half, or I can put it down after a half a drawer if it's too much. Well, after the first hit, it felt even more comfortable. I felt like I could push it. And then, I spent about 25 minutes on that last pen, and the last few, I just went in and I took fucking long rips as long as I could, maybe 5 or 6, held them as hard as I could, and I had my beautiful 5-MeO white out. I saw the back of the house type shit. I saw what I needed to see, but it was 2 hours of having my space held, knowing my body was comfortable. And when I finally got there, it wasn't intimidating, it wasn't scary. And to your point, which you weren't able to do, I was actually able to come back with recollection of this beautiful dance. Where it was this ebb and flow, a little bit further, a little bit further, a little bit further to, ah, there it is. And I think that same protocol could be used with NN-DMT, where the inclination would be, and maybe this is in my when I was early on, it would be, well, why would you cut it? All of the vape pens I make, I want 100 proof, no carrier oiled. I don't want it cut with CBD or THC, because when I make my vape pens, I just put crystals right into a cartridge. So they go in crystals, and then right before I use them, I just heat them with a hair dryer. So it goes from wax to like an oily thing. And I always took pride in I only have 100 proof vape pens. So if you're smoking my vape pens, it's full blown, not cut with anything. Where, cool, there's a time and a place for that. For my buddy who's maybe wants to tiptoe into DMT, should he do 4 huge rips of 100 proof pen? Mm, I don't know. Well, I do know. No, the answer is no.
Probably not.
I wouldn't suggest that. Now,
Right.
I would say though, if that's your intuition, and I'll hear you out. I wouldn't just be like, no, you're a fool. You can't do that. But maybe if they've already sat with ibogaine, if they've already done shrooms, if they're already like, hey, listen, I've, I'm, I'm in the same place you were, dude, and I need to fucking see this shit and see it now, with discretion, like yes, but. Yeah, so it was such a beautiful, beautiful dance. And then if I could, that was day one of the retreat. Um, and I just felt so full of gratitude and so honored that while NN-DMT embraced me, saved my life, gave me this transformative moment, and my sights and sounds and all of my human senses got elevated with NN-DMT. Well, now this 5-MeO brought me within, kind of collapsed it, shut all that other shit off, and then got me to this more primal vibratory hum, which was absolutely beautiful. But then the next day, which is, hey, this is why we're here. We're in the desert. We've got the good place to go. Well, now let's combine them. So let's combine LSD. Let's combine MDMA with the 5-MeO with a little bit of shroom tea. And then I spent 8 or 9 hours exploring all of those things all at the same time. Kicked off with a full dose of LSD to kind of tie the symphony kind of together with a universal beat. But then I had my 5-MeO pen that I knew that I could take. And then at the end, the MDMA to kind of, level it out and listen to the Native American drums and flute music and come back peacefully, gracefully, and beautifully. Not scary, not oh shit, not at a club, not in the woods, not at a concert. Again, there's a time and a place for all of those things. I'm not shitting on any of them, but if you're doing it for therapeutic work, if you're doing it because like I was, because you're suicide, depressed, if you have mental issues, if you're trying to overcome some trauma and you're trying to really show reverence and respect and get some answers, there's a really safe and beautiful way to do it, and you don't have to do it alone, and it doesn't have to be scary, and you can do it at your own pace, and there's no wrong way. And if one thing I learned, which was really cool, was sharing this molecule with several other people. The people that are really experienced psychonauts and have done a lot of different things, they'll take the traditional 3 hits and go deep and be good. And I mean, that's very impressive. If you can take that, so I'm not shitting on that. Like if you can take 3 hits of NN or 5-MeO and hold it and do a blast off. But then there's these little old ladies that are like, well, this is my first time and how much should I take? And it's like, well, lean into it. And should I lay down? Should I sit up? And it's again like, hey, listen, your body's going to tell you if you need to lay down. And most people, you just learn, like you have no control. And there's like these, whatever age, older than I, you know, sitting there ripping the fucking DMT pen 8 times and just zim, like zenned out lotus position with a smile on their face, not laying back, not shaking, and then just being like, oh, this is nice. Talking fully lucid. And I'm seeing, it's not like they didn't know how to hit the vape pen. They're blowing it out, and I'm taking in the secondhand clouds, and I'm like, fuck, how are you taking 8 of these rips? It's because they listen to their body, they listen to their intuition, they that DMT realm welcomed them with open arms and said, let me show you the way. They listened to it and they came back with a great experience. And then some just took 2 hits, listened to the birds and bees, and also had a great experience. But lean into it would be my suggestion.
So years ago, when I first started, there was a book by D.M. Turner, and it's out of print now. I can't think of the title. I found a copy of it and got it recently. It's back at home in Idaho, but he has chapters of what he would combine. Like I did a little ketamine, and then I did some of this, and I did some of that, and it was fascinating. So I really liked the this aspect of combining the medicines. Sounds pretty amazing what you just shared. So you have this 8 hour incredible experience with all these different medicines. What a ride, what a journey. What's the integration like after that? I mean, and then the next day, are you diving right back into the void? How does that work for you?
So that particular session that I explained to you, that's so day 2 of being introduced to 5-MeO. That particular day, it was 5-MeO, LSD, MDMA, and a gram of shrooms. So not a bunch of shrooms, but enough to give you that nice kind of Mother Earth feel there. Uh, for me, and this is where I'm so lucky, I'm so blessed. And part of me kind of like starting my story about DMT, about like, this like rich white boy from New England, college educated, got gifted money. Like, yeah, it's easy for you, you spoiled white guy. And I say that with all due respect, and I'm not racist and I'm not, but like most people don't have the money to spend multiple thousands of dollars to go on the retreat. So my integration, to answer your question honestly, was after that, I came out and I had homemade sweet potato soup that had roasted pepito nuts and drizzled oil and homemade sourdough bread. And I was able to continue to listen to great music and had, camp that I had singing bowls there to play with. I was out in the middle of the desert under the beautiful stars. I was able to integrate with them for as long as I wanted to until they said, hey, when do you want us to leave? And then I was able to sit under the sky for hours, sleep fully in, have a great healthy breakfast, and then go for a walk in the canyon at Mount Zion. Assuming not Mount Zion, Zion National Park.
Mhm.
So that area. So you can imagine if you've ever been there, how gorgeous that is. So for me, I was blessed to do it with experts in the absolute ideal situation. Now, my life, again, so what is my path and what am I doing with it? A couple things. I want to take the lessons that I've learned, and now I've done that modality, that location, those people multiple times with multiple different people, and I'm blessed to, I believe, I'll be doing that in beautiful locations like that for the rest of my life. Um, I'd like to be able to share that experience with as many good qualified people as possible. So, and for a lot of different reasons, and I can get in how and why and like the actual logistics of it. But I am starting a nonprofit. I've already been working on it for like 5 months. All those connections that I had in Martha's Vineyard with all the millionaires and billionaires, all of my past experiences being a real estate investor and being in the real estate community, my balls about not giving a fuck talking like comfortably, and excuse my language, but like sometimes that's what I would have to use to break the doors of the people that would give me that type of money. I want to set up scholarship funds to help veterans, to help moms and dads, to help moms and dads of suicide, to people with mental health issues, suicide ideation. Really, the mission statement and vision statement of the nonprofit is simply to turn suicide ideation into self-knowledge and self-love. And that is kind of the universal thread of whether you use these plant medicines or not, or whether you have the ability to go on these retreats. It all begins with knowing to take the time for yourself. to whether it be an hour to do yoga, whether it be taking yourself fishing on the weekends, knowing that you're worthy of the time for self-exploration. And then if you do that long enough, deep enough, ideally you'll find self-love. And then when you find self-love, you can kind of do what I did. Stop doing the self-destructive acts, remove the plaque, take accountability for all the shit that you're doing wrong, and then live in a way that, and not to come out like all kumbaya, like it's all one in love, but like one of the things I'm doing, which is really cool, I'm writing a bi-monthly bulletin for an organization called Psychedelic States of America. It's this great organization of journalists that are writing like really cool novel stuff. And like I'm always doing these like bullet points of like what psychedelics are. And like yes, they're amazing, yes, they're profound, but they're not for everybody. Psychedelics, DMT is definitely not for everybody. But the modalities of I mentioned doing a darkness retreat, going to Monroe, looking at your website. So the power of sound vibration. The power of saying mantras over and over. The power of sitting there and vibrating in coherence with a group of people with the same intention of healing and love. And some people be like, "Oh, that's woo-woo." Yeah, well, sit there in that circle, and your body starts shaking, and you start crying uncontrollably, and you start purging something that you didn't even know you needed to purge, and you tell me it's fake. And it sounds like you've been doing this for as long as you have, because you've seen it firsthand, I'm sure, countless times, and it's transformative. And there's a lot of people with a lot of trauma, and not self-induced, like rich, spoiled little brat boy stuff like I did, like really, really painful stuff that people have to process. And they need, psychedelics can be the catalyst to start the open, transparent conversation, which is why I love it. Sounds like you put that as a priority. It's not these psychedelics are a magic pill. It's not like, oh, the vet with PTSD, you got to do ibogaine, or like me, recovering alcoholic, narcissist. Oh yeah, it's shrooms and DMT. No, it's maybe a combination of all, maybe none, but it starts with just knowing you're not alone, taking accountability, group therapy, like self-exploration, and finding your tribe of people. And it's not alcohol, it's not prescription pills, it's not blaming other people. And yeah, that's this story that I plan on trying to share. So that's why, when you and I connected, it's like, yes, like another place to share my opportunity. And then especially say coming after like Dennis McKenna, like fucking how cool is that?
I think what I really love, I'm loving this, Adam. I really am. I knew that I would love this conversation with you, and it's better than I even thought it would be. You mentioned earlier about holding space, and then what you just said about maybe it's about the medicines, maybe it's not. But it is always, I mean, there's some of us are here to hold space for people, whether it's with the medicines, whether it's just to look people in the eye and say, I love you because you're worthy and deserving, because you're here. And it takes a whole lot of freaking courage to be a human, let alone go on all these journeys and everything else. And that's a key point, and you get that. And I love hearing it. I do want to ask a question. So you're 4.5 years into all these amazing psychedelic experiences. You're kind of a balls to the wall guy, which is great. I admire that. And then also, the foreplay, so to speak, is not lost on you. How have the journeys changed? Let's not go back 4.5 years, because obviously that was a completely different time as you're just making your entry into all this. But let's go back like 2 years, and then what you went through in the last couple of weeks, which you were referring to. How have those journeys changed, and what's being unearthed now? Is it easier? I mean, obviously, you've already said that you haven't cleared all the stuff out yet and everything else. Is it you're still peeling back layers of the onion? What's happening for you?
So I'm gonna try to bullet point this because there's so much, and I'm really trying, like, not there's nothing about this elaborated, but it is kind of like what the fuck. But I do want to make sure I put this out there when I want to state I'm the most happy that I've ever been. I'm so content. I'm comfortable in my own skin. And I say this often. I have my morning and night routine of prayers of gratitude, and I'm so, so happy. I'm in the best mental, spiritual, and physical health I've ever been in. That being said, I almost feel like I say all that, and I do have to put the asterisk. Like, because I can do all this cool shit and all this exploration and all this traveling because I have no wife and I've never been married. I have no kids. I've never had kids. I've been in three long-term relationships. All those women told me to go pound sand, and all those step kids that I loved like my own fucking hate me because I yelled at their mom and treated their mom like shit. All the money that I had, I'm now broke. I used to make 200 plus grand a year. I think the last 3 years, and just honestly, full disclosure, I think I made like 28 grand on my taxes last year. Like, what the fuck? I used to own 15 homes. I'm currently still living in my parents' basement after owning all of that. So it's not like I'm some enlightened soul that's got it all figured out and follow my path and I'm good. But what has happened is I've had the opportunity to go to the Monroe Institute, to spend a week at the Darkness Retreat, to now go to these psychedelic retreats, and every one of those people become lifetime friends where now I have houses across the country where I can stay for free, I can eat for free. Any one of those people, if I ask for money, will give me money. And I'm not saying that in some bragging way. Again, I don't have all the self-made material wealth, but I have the real wealth that I needed and not that superficial level shit. So I just want to put that out there where it's like, I've got to be humble in my reality of where my current state is, and I do still have a lot of work. But so just very, very recently, um, my life was running smoothly. That first book that I wrote, Butler's DMT Field Guide, has an article about sex and psychedelics, and there's an article, a chapter in the back by a woman named Alicia. I was with her for almost 4 years. The love of my life, my best friend, the best relationship that I've ever had. We would have sex 25 times a week. We would do psychedelics all the time. She's the one that I explored tantric sex with shrooms. All of my status and clout as sex psychedelics guy was wrapped up with her. Now, we were in open poly relationships, so there was a lot of dynamic there. I'm still really good, well, still, I don't know, friends with her husband. Like, there was a lot going on there. But just literally fucking 2 months ago, her and I had, let's say, an honorable split. Nothing shady happened. There was no like necessarily FUs, but now I lost my best friend, my everything. And that was like a, oh shit. So now, I've got to deal with some of my insecurity issues, my abandonment issues, all those dark side of stuff that I had already, explored. Well, now it's confronted in my face now again. That was about 2 days before my darkness retreat. So I'm pretty raw going into my darkness retreat. I go in, and there's a lot I'd like to share about the darkness retreat. It was profound. It was beautiful. It was psychedelic, even though, and you asked the right question. I did not do any psychedelics there, but really just a beautiful thing about self-knowledge and self-love. But I came out of that, and the gentleman holding it for me, he held the perfect space. He spoke when he needed to. He gave me my time when I needed to. But I had 100 plus hours of straight darkness, and I didn't cheat at all. No light flicker, no candle. 100 plus hours of pitch black. So I come out, and long story short, I cry in his arms. I'm constantly and it's like I have this daddy issue that only came about 5 years ago once I stopped being an alcoholic. Because my dad, him and I were good old boys drinking together until I became sober, moved back in, and saw how shitty he treated my mom, just like I treated all these other women. And it was like, whoa, don't treat my mom like that, you fucking alcoholic piece of shit. Like, how dare you? Well, him and I, for the last 5 years, have been butting heads. We've threatened to kill one another. My mom has almost called the cops. It's been horrible. While I'm still this, but all in all, my life is good. But I just put my father in this, like, whatever. I'll hopefully something happens. Well, and this is all new. 2 months ago now, I come out of the darkness retreat. I write this heartfelt 9-page letter on the way home. I'm flowing from source. I'm going to converse with my dad. We're going to figure it all out. Long story short, him and I have another major blowout. My friend's there. It goes fucking horribly south. He has a psychotic break, ends up in a fucking psych ward for a year. My mom says she's getting a divorce and saying, fuck you, I'm leaving. Again, this is all brand new of a 50 plus year marriage. And now I'm raw as fuck coming out of the darkness retreat. I have no Alicia, no dad. My mom's fucking wigging out. And that's when I stayed up for a week and just published that book that I think I sent you the link to, The Alchemist of Tears. So that was this coffee table book of my journey that I did several years ago on the DMT, because I have like 5,000 pictures of 40 states, all these national parks. And I was like, I need to alchemize my tears. I need to do something. I need to fucking channel all of this pain. So I basically stayed up for a week, made this beautiful 120 page full, and this is not a book promotion. This is what I did. I can put it all together, 120 page, full size, hardcover, beautiful coffee table book with beautiful like poetic narrative through it, shows some of the most profound areas that I saw. It's opened up so many doors. I've got speaking events, it's selling really good, all this crazy shit that happened just in like that last week. Well, coming out of that, because I'm connected in this community, that's how I just got invited to go to these two other retreats out west, which just opened up so many other doors. And then offered all of this like practical application, IFS training, 5-MeO. So just within the last 3 months, it's been major loss, major training. Oh, and this is for, and I'm so happy that this gets to end like this. My father, he's sitting above me right now, Dave Butler, fucking love you. This man was an alcoholic for 50 plus years, right? So that was the major, like, how dare you? How dare you not see what a fucking asshole you are? And especially so as bad as he was, I was even worse. So it was a trigger, right? Because he was holding the mirror up to me. And all I could do was say, Dad, like, I see it, right? Like, this was me. So, um, when he had his break from alcohol just for that week, he's now 2.5 months sober. He hasn't had a sip of
Wow.
alcohol, and I have full faith that he never will. He's not smoked any weed. He's completely sober on alcohol, on cannabis as well. He is now every day, he's apologizing to me and my mother, and not in some sugar-coated type way. He knows he's going to spend the rest of his life making up for all the pain that he's caused. He probably never will, but he's like, Adam, I can't believe I was so deep in that funk. I can't believe I was clouded for that long. Oh, because he thought everybody was plotting against him, me, my mom, my sister, my nieces. And now, for the first time in literally his entire adult life at 72 or 73, however old he is, he's got clarity of thought. Every day, him and I have honest, transparent, authentic dialogue. We hug and kiss each other every day. When him and I hug, it's heart to heart, temple to temple, cheek to cheek. We hold each other for sometimes 2 minutes, sometimes five. And we're hugging again and loving each other as father and son for the first time in fucking 5 years. And it's beautiful. And now him and my mom are rebuilding their friendship, whatever that may mean, who knows? And that's up to them to decide. Him and I now have each other back, and it's awesome. And if I could, that whole scenario of like just wanting to be seen, wanting to be heard, wanting to be held, wanting to be loved, that's what I think the psychedelic experience allows with yourself when you explore that self-knowledge and self-love. And then whatever your sense of God, source, infinite intelligence, creator, like however you want to, and maybe if you're whatever, a nihilist or a agnostic or like whatever, there's, in my opinion, there's still something higher that we can connect to. And once you realize that's one and the same, life doesn't become easy and the problems don't go away, and you still get kicked in the junk and have taxes and red lights and shit, but you don't self-destruct with alcohol. You certainly don't yell and scream at a beautiful woman who only wants to love you and think they're the problem because you're insecurity, jealous little baby boy shit. Like, it sounds so obvious on the other side of it, but there's a lot of people that need the help getting out of their own way, like I did, but then just having the honor, honestly, the true honor to sit with vets that have seen some incredible shit, to sit with women that have been abused or molested or raped, for people that have moms that have lost their babies, to sit with people that have to put that into, or a woman beautifully had to walk her husband home, truly, meaning that she walked him for the last few years, gracefully into his death. There are people that have to process some pretty heavy emotions, and I'm honored to have an interaction with my sense of self, my masculine, my feminine, to know that my body as a vessel can hold these plant medicines, right, in synthetic, and help people hold that mirror up to themselves, because that's really all it is. And you've seen it. And that's, I'm sure that's what you do. You're not sitting there being like, hey, read this book, listen to this chant, follow my course, and you'll find the answer. It's like, no, you've got to look in the mirror, go for a walk in the woods, pray, meditate, and yeah, maybe this particular frequency sound bowl will help. Maybe not. Maybe some shroom tea will help. Maybe not. But knowing that you need to explore yourself is everything. And keep doing that and you'll find it.
What a
Sorry,
beautiful.
I've been ranting, man. I've been fucking I feel I just got back from this like 9 day. I'm like fucking I'm hot. Sorry.
No, this is great. And I love bringing in masculinity, vulnerability, emotional healing. I mean, that's really it's, we live in a culture where people just want like the next high, the next, pinnacle experience, but what it does is it takes us into the biggest issues of who we are and how we navigate this life, and then for you, fucking A, man, for you to bring this healing to your family, and not an easy thing, I need to ask, what do they think about all your psychedelic exploration, DMT? Are you and dad going to do DMT at some point? Where's that at?
So great question. And again, thank you for asking. So I would say my answer now is still probably what it was when I first started doing it two or whatever, what it would have been 3 years ago, which is they're probably not going to do psychedelics. I don't necessarily know that they need it, but they've seen what it's done for me. They truly know that it saved my life. And they know now that, I really was that dark negative energy that used to go in a room and completely stink it up. Excuse me, where now I really do try to project love and light and sympathy and empathy. And again, not saying that in a corny way, saying it in an honest way, because it's enriching for me, because it makes my conversations interesting. It's opened up so many doors for me. And it's like, that's how I like to present myself. So when, when my mom gets her hair done every, 2 weeks or whatever it is, she's sharing the story about how ayahuasca and DMT helped me and saved my life. And by default,
Yes.
we'll take some of that taboo and stigma away from it. And that those stories are really helpful. But now recently with what had happened to my father, so he was a vet, so he ended up in that psych ward was a VA hospital. So in the VA hospital, there were several vets there that were there for the same time. So now they're going through the same group therapy. And there were several vets there that had said, hey, they had used ayahuasca and 5-MeO. So now he's coming back being like, hey, there was this vet there that I'm sitting with for whatever, 6 weeks worth of therapy. And he's telling these transformative stories with ayahuasca. So now it's another man sharing this story in a vulnerable setting with a doctor there that made him agree with it. And then there was another woman who had used DMT and it really helped her. So then now he's coming back, taking copies of my book, giving them out, giving my cell phone out to people, giving my cell phone out to the vets. So it's changed now a little bit where they went from being like cool with it to now they're actually promoting it and being like, no, this is actually like my mom is really proud of that coffee table book because it's beautiful and there's no swears in it. It's not like it's a beautiful, beautiful coffee table book that's appropriate for a 5-year-old or a 95-year-old. Um, so now it's changed and morphed. And will they potentially sit with it? Maybe. But now that I know that I can apply hey, when I want to put my mom or my dad who's just going through a bunch of shit into that white space of 5-MeO or have them interact with insectoids and NMDMT the first run, no. But now that I've done these kind of, hey, we have all day, there's no rush, we've got plenty of the product. Let's lean into it, listen to intuition. Could we dance with it and do that ebb and flow like I was taught? Yes, that could be an option. And you mentioned masculinity. I do want to put this out there because I think it's really important. And um I just recently put a couple Instagram posts about it, and this gentleman and I are going to collaborate where one of these people that I worked with very intimately recently is just the most badass of vets, like the most like alpha of alpha males who's been trained to dismantle people and is just, he outweighs me by like 50 pounds. He could easily snap my neck very easily. Like as much as I talk like an alpha male and I'm not intimidated by death or pain. I've, but like I mentioned, I've never been in a fight. And if I see blood, I'll pass out. So I'm not going to run my mouth to a fucking Green Beret. And this dude really was a Green Beret, right? And it's like, what the fuck? So I'm sitting there across the table from him being like, listen, I know if we got into a fight physically, you could fuck me up. I know you're trained to like dismantle me. I know you outweigh me and are physically superior to I in this, like, if we were to engage. That being said, I'm not intimidated by you in any way. I'm not afraid of getting beat up. I'm not afraid of my physical space. I'm not afraid of dying. Like, cool, I know you can do that. Like, whatever. What are we going to measure our junk on the table? If so, we can do that. But what I'm saying is once we get into that other energetically elevated space, well, that's where I'm going to shine. And if we're going to go in there and blend, we need to make sure we're cool because that's where the real power is going to happen. And there was just this beautiful, authentic, transparent, like, hey, listen, I'm coming with this all pent up Hulk type energy, and I've got a lot of sexual energy built up. And I just excuse me, intimately with his wife doing a session. So me and his wife just went really, really deep. So it's like, how is this gonna fucking go? And the point was we threw all our cards on the table, everything was laid out. I felt comfortable then going in a small, basically enclosed room with this man for him and I to do one-on-one trading. And I said, listen, I want to go first because I'm basically going to know instantly. And I'm very intuitive in person, but I'm also extremely intuitive when I get into that space. And pretty much, listen, I'm either going to come out and you and I are going to fucking tussle and whatever happens, happens, or you and I are going to go deep into the space and hopefully we can beautifully make love in this psychedelic realm. And it was so great because instantly our energies blended in such a beautiful way where like he held my hand, I pulled him through, he pulled I through. We ended up having this beautiful dance together for like over an hour where we both went deep into the 5-MeO space. We both held each other, we cried. He shared some shit with me that went like military deep about like trauma. I went deep about with my shit. And we came out with this kind of beautiful analogy that, you know what? We're like the icebreaker ships that are going out into Antarctic to break the ice to either save people or to break the way for people to go out. And you know what? Yes, we're big ass badass ships with the most powerful engines and the thickest crust and the toughest hulls, but sometimes we get stuck. Sometimes we get run out of gas. Sometimes we break down. And you know what? We need somebody else to have our back to go out, and we need a fleet. So not just me and him, but yeah, his wife, and then that other guy, and yeah, and like we had this just beautiful fucking dance that we had in person, like when we came out, but then in that psychedelic space. And I knew it was so great because with all of his strength and all of his badass and all of his training, so like he would be able the guy that could pick up me and you probably one on shoulder and run for 2 miles like out of a volcano. So you want somebody like that, right? So I knew coming out of that space, and I don't want to speak out of term, but I know I can say this with full confidence. And he'd be like, yeah, Butler, you can say that. He would like I knew instantly that he would scoop me up like a fucking baby, like he would done any of his other Green Beret mates that he just served whatever on 4 tours with or had contracts with and saw some gnarly shit, that he would take a bullet for those men, lay on a grenade and take them out of danger, that he would treat my physical body and protect it the same way that he would those other men. So I instantly was diffused. I knew that, wow, this gorilla of a man who could fuck up damn near anything was now my biggest fucking asset. And now I have this gorilla strength behind me and great. And then he instantly knew that, like, oh, fuck, I get this like psychonaut wizard type energy that can hold my hand in this space. And collectively, what can't we accomplish? And then we went down and to really tie a bow on how our masculinity fucking, again, say something to either one of us, we went down and his wife was sitting on the chin and I just came down. I'm like, well, me and your husband just consummated our fucking love for one another. And she's like, really? Like, well, I hope we didn't get him pregnant. And it's like, that's the type of levity though and light where these two men, and then if you're interested in that story, look on my Instagram because he's the guy that I'm hugging. He's invested with a bunch of vets groups. He's helping other men, and he told me straight up he's lost 40 of his comrades to suicide that he knows personally over the last few years, and that's too many. But those men need people like me that can absorb some of that shit. But then the same token, people that can sit with an old grandmother or a 28-year-old single mom who, you don't try to grope her boob or try to fucking find a sugar mama to get you to give you money. Like let's be authentic, transparent. We can, just yeah. It's so great where I interact with all of those. The pretty young woman, the sugar lady, and then the badass vet. And there was nothing about sex, nothing about money, nothing about anything other than just I see you, I hear you, I love you, I hold you, I'm here for you, and we'll be here forever. And that conveys way beyond psychedelics, way beyond any vets or women's or age, or like that's the message that you've been sharing. And I can say honestly, like I'm new to this. So I'm just recently fucking leaning into this buzz, how great that feels. You've been doing it for decades. So you get it. Like, and it feels awesome. Those people are friends for life. And whatever that means, that's the wealth. Like I've had the millions, I've had the houses, I've had the fancy cars, I've had the women. Cool. There's nothing wrong with all that. But now I have like spiritual friendships where these people know my deepest, darkest secrets, but they also know my shiniest of iridescent lights. And they don't judge me for my past. If anything, they applaud me for not being crushed by it. And now they amplify my color and my uniqueness. And I'm collaborating with all sorts of cool people. I'm making music videos, I'm making fucking documentaries, movies, writing multiple books with people, speeches, all sorts of fun shit with great people.
I
All
love it.
sharing the same their own way. So
Now we're nearing the end. I've just got a few more questions. Tell me what's on the psychedelic medicine bucket list for you. What are you kind of wanting to add to your experience?
so Bufo, like we mentioned, just because I would like to understand what the natural toxins or what the other natural molecules do and what they taste. And I do just from an exploratory way. I would like to do that. Um the DMTX, and I get asked that all the time, like, would you like to do the DMTX type deal? I am super scared of needles, and again, I'll pass out if I see blood. So like I really there's no way I could sit there with that needle in my arm and feel comfortable and be able to get into a cool state. But I do think there's ways of having like kind of like what I mentioned about doing with that, having somebody there where you could time it, where whether you have somebody every 5 minutes, giving you the pen and holding it, or maybe some sort of vaporized mask, or like some other modality where you could do like an extended DMT where you're setting that pulse rate, but it doesn't have to be intravenous. So like I'd like to try to explore that, and then something that, and maybe not necessarily promoting this, but it was fantastic. And if we're sharing everything, I can't wait to do it again. Um, when I was in that safe space with that group of people, we had live music being played. We had like trance-like energy happening. And there's a specific song that happened on my first time out there that really, really shook up some emotional stuff in me. And that song was being played again live in person over me, echoing me, for me specifically. And I had the opportunity to take the 5-MeO pen and the DMT pen, and we could kind of, again, go with your intuition. Well, my intuition was as long as I could with the NN, and before I exhale, as long as I could with the 5-MeO, hold it for as long as I could, just blow out this chalky fucking cloud, do it again. And I did that round like 5 times. So maybe like 12 hits to a five is, 10 to 12 hits all together, deep of like a 50-50 blend of NN and 5-MeO. And again, maybe not something you do as a newbie, but I was
Maybe
held,
not.
I was safe. There was everything was going. And I felt so comfortable. And I mean, you have a big beard. Like what I had my beard and I had it wrapped in my face. So I was blowing it back into my face. So I was smelling both of the products, my breath. It was in the music. It couldn't have been well, it was literally the most profound transformative experience because now I wasn't suicidal, I wasn't anxious, I wasn't depressed. I was multiple days into this beautiful safe place. I was in my element. Like that was me rewarding myself for the job well done, Adam. Like this is for you, man. You've got a live music, multiple beautiful women singing to you, multiple solid masculine men holding ground. You're good. And it was great. And I did that for about I don't know, like a half hour, and it was fantastic. So more of
Nice.
that. Definitely more of that.
What about ibogaine? Is it on the list?
No, no, because and I'm just being honest. I've never been in a hospital. I've never broken a bone. I don't like fucking like I shouldn't say I've never been in a hospital. I had a hemorrhoid impromptu surgery, but other than that, yeah, I don't like needles. I don't like that setting, that smell. So my understanding is to do ibogaine safely, you really need to have a medical professional in that setting. So I'm really I'm not interested in a sterile white suit I can't, like, I want to be able to go out and listen to the birds and pee on a tree and whatever, like eat some granola if I want, not be like, no, you can't move, you're tied into a bed. So,
Right.
but I know, and I work with a couple of people that it's really helped them. And quite honestly, and they'll say, like I said, DMT saved my life. They'll say straight up, DMT, I mean, excuse me, Ibogaine helped save my life. And I've inquired about that a little bit further. And I'm not the expert in this. Again, you would know who would be. But my understanding is like the neuroreceptors that Ibogaine hits is different than like NN-DMT and some of the other like traditional psychedelics, and that it is specifically good for PTSD. So, if vets are suffering from that, ibogaine seems to have a really, good effect rate because it's hitting that whatever part of your brain. So, I don't want to discourage people and be like, oh yeah, I don't like hospitals either. Yeah, well, if it's either hospitals or going to friggin', launch a car off a cliff, sit in the hospital, please. Um,
So
yeah.
one final question, and it's a big one. You go with this wherever you want. Your perspective of the nature of reality has shifted. No doubt, that's a no-brainer. What do you want to share about that? Because I just a quick side note. I was at a retreat years ago. Woke up Terrence McKenna in the middle of the night. The others in the DMT place told me to go. I was also on acid. It was uncomfortable, but they wouldn't let up the others. And once I got my message that they wanted shared with him, I was like, and I was doing a fair amount of DMT at that time. And I was like, Terrence, how do you handle it? How do you handle a foot in each world? Like it was challenging for me at that time. And this was relatively early on. So probably, a year and a half into my DMT experiences, and share with us nature of reality and what you've learned.
So, and thank you for that question. And I think as profound as that is, and as kind of like existential as you can kind of pull that apart, I think it comes down to something very, very simple, which is that humans are way more than our typical five senses. And what psychedelics allow is for the human to dial up our senses to a level that we typically don't normally experience. So if those five senses, and again, analogies, can be dialed up, say, from 0 to 10. On psychedelics, you can turn those five senses up to 100 or 1,000 or 1,000,000. But in addition to doing that, I think we innately, as divine human beings from source, have multiple other senses that we don't have all the names for, but like telepathy, like the telepathy tapes with all the non-verbal autistic children, clearly we can convey information non-verbally across time, across distance in that space, right? Like that happens. Remote viewing, again, why I went to the remote Monroe Institute. It's not one person, it's many, and there's multiple data points where it's like it's not a matter if it does. Now, what does that mean? All of these transcendent experience that we've all had in the psychedelic states mean, in my opinion, that there's something else out there. So specifically in DMT, I believe that we kind of like Aldous Huxley's like reducing valve when in the book like Doors of Perception, where you just either increase the sensitivity of your antenna or you add a modality. So you add the CD player or you add the satellite player or you add the cassette player or whatever it is, or you increase the sensitivity to whatever the bandwidth is so that you can take in more vibratory information. Within that information is the insectoid entities, is the godlike figures, are the jesters, are the elves, are those aspects of yourself. And I think as humans lean into knowing themselves and loving themselves and exploring themselves, we're going to find that we are way greater than our normal five senses. We have way other, many more of them, that we're not alone in this world, as well as like non-sentient beings, that it is really all about kind of vibration and love. And that, and it's, again, thank you for asking this question, because the next bi-monthly bulletin that's coming out, it should be out in a couple of weeks, is that what is, and I call it, the title is Psychedelic Evolution, the Next Step in Human Advancement. So to your point, what is the reality and how do I think it, or what this is? I think we're at this point in human evolution where we can either have a couple things. We're either going to die off, and we're going to fucking go like the way of the dodo bird, so to speak. Potentially a speciation event where like the good and the light separate from the shitty and the dark. Or what I really think happens is humans realize, and again, where the nonprofit comes in, if people can take suicidal ideation and or in to a lesser degree negative self-talk, depression, anxiety, and turn it into self-knowledge and self-love, we can all thrive as a species, which then we can expand the psychedelics, or excuse me, expand the senses. And this is where it's really important about talking about darkness retreats, talking about breath work. Um, in that 9-day retreat, one of the most profound experiences I had was completely sober, just doing breath work, conscious connected breath work, where it's open mouth breathing nonstop. Oh shit, like really connective energy. So it's it's people exploring themselves, and then everybody that I've talked to that comes back, it's this sense of oneness, this sense of love, increased empathy, increased sympathy. What we all do when we do that for several generations, I don't know, but I think that is the key to really understanding what this reality, what this simulacra is, or matrix, or whatever it may be. But we need to get rid of the proverbial plaque, get rid of what society's fucking caked on us. And as each one of us humans dial up the five senses we have, and then add on 500 or 5,000 or whatever, and go deep into these spaces of self, that's where the answer is. Not in social media, not in prescription pills, not in alcohol, not in fucking mainstream media. It's in conversations like this, and it's in groups like I just left, and it's again sitting with the group like you've done, with some heartfelt energy and some sound bowls and some meditation, and yes, some incense and maybe even some feathers. Yes, like because it helps. And then yeah, people you know, because it's self-perpetuating and it feels good, and that's not coming off as holier than not or enlightened, but you know what it's like to feel good in your own skin and to be aligned with what your purpose is here. And if everybody could do that, my understanding, and again, it's everybody I've talked to, is when you have that sense of self and self-knowledge for yourself, you extend that very easily to everybody else around you, because everybody else has a different path, different experiences, and you don't try to convince the other person to think like you or force them to be different, or to be like, oh, how stupid are you as the 80-year-old guy that you don't think like me, or how do you as the mom that just lost her 3 kids, what, you don't think like me, the drunk guy that never had kids? It's like, no, of course you're going to think differently. So it's just easy, in my opinion, to have difference of opinion about government or schooling or whatever, all of that shit from a place of, cool, I appreciate your perspective. I don't even have to agree with it, but it's not belittling, bringing people down, talking shit to one another. It really is, there's a collaborative way of, let's figure out this together. And really, again, kumbaya, woo woo, all is love. But again, I match you up with me, you, and that veteran guy. So again, you and I, or the three of us on the stage together with all of our unique experiences. And, what man is going to say F you to all three of us? I don't think any. And honestly, if they did, they're the ones that need the hug the most. And all three of us would lean in with a hug and by the end of it, they'd be the biggest fan of all of us, and they'd be doing exactly what we're doing, which is spreading the message. So if you're in this dark place, and I know, we'll kind of wrap it up if we could. If anybody is in a dark, shitty place, if anybody literally is going through this, some of the same crap that I've been through and a lot of the people that I discussed have gone through, really the message is that you're not alone, that there is light at the end of the tunnel, that there are people there to help, whether, psychedelics are resonating with you or not. It doesn't matter. It really starts with self-exploration and knowing that you are worthy of taking the time to do that. And I extend my inner circle and my connections to you. All of my books I happily send free PDF copies to anybody that wants them. So it's not that I'm trying to sell books. I'll happily share my message for free. I can give free copies of that audio version of the DMT Field Guide you mentioned. I still have like, a dozen or so coupons that I can give out for free if anybody wants the audio version. And, I'm here for you. I've got friends that are here for you, and I'll share my resources. Yeah, like life can be beautiful once you get the crap out of the way.
Adam Butler, I want to thank you for being a guest on the DMT Chronicles. I want to thank you for being real, raw, authentic. It's not just refreshing, it's what's needed right now. It's you're a gift to humanity. Keep up the good work. I feel like we just scratched the surface, and there's so much more. I'm looking to possibly have you back sooner than later. I know you've got some other things, so much brewing.
Well,
Um,
two
but
really cool books coming out this summer. So maybe reconnect in the fall or winter, and one's about Dark Night of the Soul, one's about psychedelic integration. And I think both of those, are topics we could dive in a little bit better. Be great.
that would be awesome. Thank you so much. And, thanks for rocking an amazing beard. Uh,
You as well, sir.
Thank you. I will we'll keep in touch, and we'll put all the good links and everything in the description so people have a place to turn. Again, thank you so much. Honored to have you on the show.
Thank you very much.